So ultimately, this is going to be a trail, part of the Torres del Paine trail system. Probably will get sometimes hundreds of people per day on the trail. And we've been building part of it over the last few days. A lot of this section is relatively easy for trail building because it's these open gravelly areas. Sometimes wrestling rocks around and stuff, but a lot of the time just kind of shaping the trail, making a little bit, it's sloped outward a little. It's got a slope on the back, we call the back slope. And we try to keep it just gently rising and falling along the landscape. We're working with the Torres del Paine Legacy Fund, and so we've been following the standards that they employ. One of the things that they emphasize more than we do when building the trail we've been working on in Alaska is adding little curves and stuff to the trail. And so we've been trying to get more of that sort of winding quality. Overall, I feel like it's been coming out pretty well. We also really have been doing our best to minimize impact to trees. In particular, there are some species that are very slow growing. And within the park, many of them have been killed in recent years by fires. They're all human caused. There's no natural fires really that happen here. So there have been efforts to try to conserve those that are living. These little tiny ones here are some of those. These are called nire, and they can grow to be big trees given a few hundred years. We didn't do a lot of rock work, but there were just a couple cases where we set stones. Mostly we're just moving stones off to the side. But there's one spot up here where I set one stone right next to another one that was sort of naturally set. And kind of provide a little edge to the trail. And we also, hopefully most of this is not going to be too problematic as far as water because it's pretty well drained soil. However, we do have a few low spots like this. So we built a turnpike here that will hopefully keep the trail dry. One thing that's good to do in most any trail where you're potentially dealing with water is to have grade reversals, so places where the trail switches from climbing to descending, and where or actually most importantly where it goes from descending to climbing. So there's a low spot, and where the low spot is to have some opportunity for water to drain. So that's what some of these low spots are. We'll now be going past a few piles of dirt that are left in the trail. This was because we were thinking we might use it for some turnpikes. I think we're not going to end up getting to that this year, or this outing at least. So I'm going to come through in a minute here and clear these off so the trail is smooth all the way through. Here's a larger nire on the left. We've got one section coming up here in a moment where we routed the trail along some bedrock, and this is good in that don't have to worry about it eroding and ecological impact is minimal, but it is an open question how exactly we might make it so it's clear where people should walk on this and encourage people to walk there. So I'm probably this will be another one of our kind of last tweaks to the trail. But it is kind of a neat little bit. It's got good view, and brings you up over this rock, and then you drop down off the other side. We chipped some steps into this slaty bedrock here. In general, we were seeking to follow these open gravelly areas, which are blowouts. So they're basically places where wind is eroding the trail, or is eroding the ground and leaving barren areas. So right now it's like totally calm, but that's kind of the exception here. Usually it's quite windy, and this area in particular, this little ridge, is exposed to some pretty extreme wind. And so there'll be sometimes when people walking through here will experience some quite difficult conditions. But also has great views, and it's kind of interesting, ecologically diverse area where you can see a lot of the different native Patagonian plants. Living in different ways. A lot of the choices about routing also relate to making sure we have some slope that extends down off the trail, so that any water that does get on the trail can run off of it easily. And that's one of the basic concepts in trail building, though ultimately even more basic than that is trying to figure out a way to route the trail so that people will follow the intended route. And it's always kind of hard to estimate whether you've achieved that. Where are the places that people might decide to go some way you didn't anticipate? Now here we go over the crest of this ridge. I don't know whether this is a moraine ridge or maybe an esker. And we get closer to the river. So this added trail is actually going to access a new bridge site that'll be right down here at this narrow spot. And right now the bridge hasn't been built, so we've built trail approaching the bridge site, but there are still questions about how the bridge will be, where exactly it will be constructed. And so we've kind of leave the trail, it just kind of ends all of a sudden here on this slope before the final drop down to the trail site just ahead here. And so you can see what some of this area looks like without the trail. These are fairly pokey bushes. There's kind of two different species of brush that are both a bit pointy. That's the less pointy one. And we also built a new trail that goes up that way and will join the old trail. And so together, they'll actually form a loop that people could hike.